Hey everyone, welcome to the program WRSA Radio. I am your host, Grenadier1. As always, I hope you are having a good week. It's been kind of a slow one for me, and been kind of a slow one on the international front for us, but boy, do we have a couple of things going on that potentially affect the presidential race. It's entirely possible that 2024 will see two presidential candidates under indictment running for office. Now, I say that, but I doubt it, which I will get into. But I have to bring up the other possibility, that being that the current president might actually get impeached and be forced out of office, which, again, I seriously doubt it. But what a sorry state we are in, folks. It's embarrassing, honestly. I am speaking, of course, of the two big news items this week. One being the third criminal indictment leveled against Donald Trump, as well as the rather harsh testimony this week in front of Congress by Hunter Biden's business partner that proved beyond a shadow of a doubt, at least in my opinion, and the opinion of many others, that Biden, while vice president, was directly involved in the corrupt business dealings of his son Hunter. And let's begin there, because I think that's the real story this week, really. Devin Archer was the business partner of Hunter Biden. He testified this week in congressional hearings, and he offered up proof, again, in my opinion, that not only was Joe Biden aware of the business dealings of Hunter Biden, he was involved in them while he was vice president. Now, Hunter Biden, in no uncertain terms, presented to multiple foreign entities in numerous dealings that he was a conduit to his father, and that his father would make political decisions favoring those entities if they paid Hunter money. There's text messages and emails and phone calls that lay this out very, very clearly, and they reinforce these accusations against him. And again, in my view, prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt. This testimony has at least forced Kevin McCarthy to talk about impeachment proceedings against Joe Biden for international corruption. I seriously doubt that's going to play out. It's possible. That's kind of what I meant when I said, I doubted it earlier. I'm not clear that they have the cojones to go through with this. But anyway, the mainstream media and the Democrats, of course, are completely downplaying this, and they're running cover for the Bidens. The talking point is that, well, Hunter only sold the illusion of access to his father, and so that somehow shields Joe Biden from being complicit in this arrangement. Well, that's not really quite how it works. So let me kind of lay this out, at least from my experience and my view of this. I work for an international corporation, and each year, sometimes more than once, we have this random selection process to take the international business and corruption training, ethics in business and things like that. And you get it every year, but sometimes the system picks you twice, and you have to do it again. At any rate, I've taken this a lot over the years. I've been doing this a long time, so it's something that I'm pretty familiar with, at least how it's presented to me as a person that might deal in an international business relationship, how I might avoid getting myself into trouble. This training is presented in such a way that it's kind of assumed that that you can't do this in the United States this way. And it's just kind of the way it's laid out. It's looked at as if this is something that happens only in foreign countries. And so you're trained to be on the lookout for certain red flags that foreign business people or government officials may present. And that might indicate that corruption is happening. You're supposed to report this to your legal counsel so that more official proceedings can take place. And perhaps if it crosses, some specific lines, criminal charges could be filed. This is serious stuff. It's made very clear that if you go through with these transactions, that you are guilty of perhaps multiple criminal violations, both U.S. law, international law, and the local laws of the countries that you are dealing with. So there's a lot of things that are laid out of, what are potential problems. They're not always potential problems. It's said to you, well, just one of these things alone may not necessarily be a problem, but it's red flags. It's things that you're supposed to be, on the lookout for. Reading the transcripts of Hunter Biden's text messages and emails, it's like textbook example that's used in these training for, signs of corruptions, these red flags. If I were going to be doing business in a third world country and the person that I was dealing with was the son of the country's vice president, that alone is a potential red flag. You're supposed to look at that and go, okay, what might happen because of this? If I don't do something that pleases this person who is the son of a very high public official, might that be seen as a negative, and I might lose a contract or, negatively impact an agreement just because I've made this person upset? That's a potential problem just in and of itself. But by itself, that would not necessarily be a deal breaker. But when you begin to layer on, his demands for money and his relationship to the vice president, then this is far more than the illusion of access. It is access. It is presented as being access. Even the appearance of impropriety is enough to warrant criminal violations. In other words, there is no doubt, in my opinion, that Hunter Biden is guilty of multiple criminal violations. And the fact that he is not being prosecuted for these crimes is infuriating. For somebody who has had to go through this training, and my company has had international dealings that have faced problems and ran into these issues in other countries. We've had deals fall apart because we've ran, close to these situations, ran into these situations and had to back off of them and say, well, we don't want to violate the law, so we've got to steer clear of this. Having faced that and faced negative consequences for that, being, you loss of business, that's infuriating. It's ridiculous that somebody in his position can be doing this. Now, I suspect that, given anyone else doing these same things, they would be under prosecution and going to jail. It's pretty fairly cut and dry case. But it's yet again more evidence of the two-tiered system of justice that we have imposed on us. That's what I mean when I don't think anything is really going to happen to him. But the real question is, how much is Joe Biden involved in this? Well, the messages and emails from Hunter indicate he was very involved in it. In fact, the words of Joe Biden himself indicate that he was involved in this. The Ukrainian prosecutor being dismissed because Joe Biden told him he would hold up billions of dollars to Ukraine, and son of a bitch, he was fired. He's openly admitting that he used our tax dollars to leverage a case involving an investigation into his son and his son's company in Ukraine. And again, this is blindingly obvious, but it's just dismissed. It's just, no, that really wasn't what you were seeing. The Department of Just Us remains silent on this, and so far, we've got nothing but lip service from the Republicans in Congress. Like I said, Kevin McCarthy, well, maybe we'll have to go through some impeachment proceedings. Really? You should have had the paperwork already ready. Whatever you need to file, you need to file it. You need to do it. But in the meantime, the Department of Justice is continuing its war on Donald Trump. Once again this week, we have an indictment from the DOJ, which alleges that Trump had bad thoughts about the election, and therefore he's somehow a criminal because it led to January 6th or something like that. This is a very vague and shadowy list of charges against Trump, as well as what looks like 6 others, which may include Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell, and a few others on the Trump team. Now, on the face of it, that this is a shockingly thin accusation and tenuous at best. This criminal, alleged criminal actions. Honestly, I don't see anything obviously criminal here, and the statutes that are being cited and used to kind of formulate this list of charges just don't really make a whole lot of sense. They seem to be very administrative and made up crimes, but one of these crimes has a death penalty possibility for a conviction. It's insane. The theory of the case here is just vapor. What it seems to boil down to is that Donald Trump and these others believed that the election was a problem and they had questions about it, and that motivated them to try and investigate those issues and question the results. And that's it. That's all I can see from this. They're alleging that because Trump knew he didn't win, that means that somehow the inquiry into all this was just a conspiracy to defraud the people. That's absolutely 100% bogus. It's attempting to read the mind of Trump and these others involved and prosecute them for bad think. What this list of charges does is it puts a chilling effect on anyone who might think to question the results of another election. You know, if you question the results and the government sees you as somehow a potential enemy, which is a problem in and of itself, but if they see you as being an enemy, then they will prosecute you for just questioning it. You know, seeking the truth and wanting to ensure that we have free and fair and open and honest elections, which, by the way, in case you have forgotten, those accusations have been used by the United States government to pressure and force foreign countries to bend to our will. We've threatened them with international sanctions if they didn't comply. You know, we've accused other countries of having rigged elections when we didn't like the candidate who won, so we motivate other countries to sanction and constrain that target nation because we don't like that new political person in power there. Good for thee, but not for me, I see. You know, we've reached something far worse than Banana Republic. I've seen that term thrown around out here a few times. Probably, honestly, more often than I've ever seen it in history about the United States. But honestly, if we were just a simple third world, you know, oligarchy or something like that with corruption just up and down, then you'd at least know what you were dealing with. You could pay your way out of things. You could buy protection from things. You can't do that here. This is far worse. This is every layer of corruption and government overreach. It's every facet of power being utilized to shape the world into a mutated mockery of normal. Everything that we believe to be right and wrong, everything we believe to be justice and fairness is thrown completely out the window. And not only is it abandoned, it's dragged naked through the streets to be jeered and leered at. And we're supposed to celebrate this mockery, you know, this twisting of reality. It's clown world. Now, last weekend I went to see the Oppenheimer film. Very good film, and I think it has maybe some important lessons in it. I think this film is perhaps unintentionally based, as the kids would say. I don't really know Christopher Nolan's politics and what he's trying to message in all of his movies, so I will assume it's unintentional, but some of his previous movies have some pretty traditionalist kind of outlooks on things, but anyway, like I said, I'll assume it's unintentional. So if you know the story of Oppenheimer, then you know that later in his life, well after the war and during the Cold War, he was put through the ringer and had his security clearance revoked. And this was largely due to his association with people who were known communists. So I don't contest whether he needed his security clearance revoked. That probably was a good idea. But anyway, behind that effort, the person that was pushing this was a very personal vendetta from someone whom Oppenheimer had kind of made a fool of in the past. He had kind of upstaged this person, and it upset this person, and they were carrying out a personal grudge against this man, and used the government to kind of enact that revenge. But I'll let the movie tell the rest of that story, so you can go see that. And if you don't know all the details, you won't know the ending of the movie per se. It doesn't end with the bomb going off in Hiroshima, for example. But at any rate, I won't go any deeper into that. But it got me thinking on some things. Oppenheimer was a man who was very troubled by the power that they had unleashed there at Los Alamos. He was clearly haunted by the science and what path it put us as a world on. He was a terribly flawed man as well. He was a womanizer. He was arrogant, and he was either very calculating or completely naive about the greater political picture and his place in that. He made enemies, and he either didn't care about that or had no idea the types of personalities that he was dealing with. And the other possibility is that he kind of had a martyr complex. He felt guilty because of what they had done, and he felt like he might have deserved the punishment that was metered out on him. But anyway, we have this petty human drama that's playing out alongside the unleashing of a cosmic force that has the potential to destroy everything. And that's the message that kind of came through the movie. But we're living through this all over again. We're seeing a petty human drama play out in front of us on a national stage, and it's filled with all of the old human tragedies, the suffering, the corruption, the vanity, and the violence of power. But at the same time, we have the shadow of that very same cosmic force of annihilation hanging over us. The threat of destruction that's looming out there. Even if we manage to avoid a nuclear exchange with Russia, we still have not escaped the likelihood of the collapse of our own social order. We're going to have to face that. We are going to need to decide, can we face the likely fact that we will lose everything, or take the risk of perhaps making drastic changes in our social order that must be done, but might lead to some discomfort and temporary pain. Now, I've spoken of how we tend to pick leaders who are terrible people. For whatever reason, the factors that make people likely to lead can also come with associated factors that make them very flawed people. There's a scene in Oppenheimer where the general who ran the Manhattan Project is asked about these security clearances and the scientists and whatnot, Oppenheimer specifically. And he says, after the fact, today, he would not clear Oppenheimer, but that he also would not clear most of the scientists who worked on that project. I think that's kind of emblematic. Sometimes the right person for the job at the time is not the right person for the job all the time. Necessity can sometimes override other factors. And that goes for other things as well. Sometimes it may be necessary to put aside safety and security in favor of risk and uncertainty. We may burn down the entire world if we push the button, but the risk is near zero, and theory can only take us so far. We do have a war to win. Now that's all I got time for this week, folks. Like and subscribe. Come see us over on Gab and the Mothership, and I will see you on the next episode.